Hello, and welcome to Life Matters, the program where we engage life issues with critical thinking and a biblical worldview. Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. We're honored to host a variety of guests within the pro-life movement, each bringing their own unique perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Life Matters, Assure Women's Center, or our affiliates. Our goal is to foster open, thoughtful dialogue around life-affirming issues and equip listeners to stand for life.
Welcome back to Life Matters. I'm your host, Tony Clark. Today I'm joined by Angela Copenhaver, founder of We Teach Think and Human from Day One. Once pro-choice, Angela reversed her position, founded a nonprofit in Lincoln, Nebraska, and now uses truth, reason, and science to ask bold questions about the dignity of human life. Angela, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we had a very good conversation over the phone, so I think this will just be an extension of the phone call we had, so I'm looking forward to it. To start, can you share your personal story? What experiences shaped your early views on abortion?
Yeah, very much so. I spent the good majority of my life, like you said, with a pro-choice position, really growing up thinking that abortion was a woman's right, that it helped women, it equaled, the playing field between women and men. I really drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, with the pro-choice advertising and marketing that they had done. And then in 2012, I had a very strong conversion to Christ and gave my life to Christ. But when that happened, it didn't really move me to being pro-life. It really just moved me to what I call the middle. Okay. The people that say things now like, I don't believe in abortion personally, but who am I to tell other people what they can and cannot do? So even though I had that powerful walk and journey towards Christ, it still did not make me a solid pro-life person.
Okay. So what was the turning point that led you to rethink your position?
Right. Well, I went to work for Catholic Radio for about 4 years as their development director. And about 4 years into it, I had a volunteer that was just full of joy, full of life all the time. She came in and she brought me the 40 Days for Life book to read. And she was just so excited when she came into my office. She's like, Angela, the 40 Days for Life campaign is getting ready, and we're just asking people to read this 40 Days for Life book. And when you're done reading it, what we'd like you to do is to give it to 5 other people and have them read it as well. So that's our goal. And I said, Mary, thank you so much. I love to read. And my brain was saying, totally do not want to read this book, because I was focusing on evangelization. That's what I thought God had asked me to do, and I'm trying to ignore this past part of my life. But I knew that she would come back and ask me, did you read it? And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to fly through this book. I'm going to read through it quickly. And so I did. And when I got to chapter 33, it was a chapter about a grandmother who was the 40 Days for Life champion in Helena, Montana. And her granddaughter was scheduled for an abortion at that facility. Wow. So it was over a period of years when I was actually living in Montana, working for a very large transportation company, that I was actively volunteering and supporting Planned Parenthood of Montana. So when I saw the chapter and it said Helena, Montana, I had an emotional breakdown, honestly. I knew what the facility looked like. I had been there. I had given them my money and my time. And it was the first time in my life where I really thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Who have I led away from Christ with my poor example and my money? And I knew that I had to do something different at that point. So I took probably about 3 months in just prayer, constant prayer. God, what do you want me to do? And I spent most of my secular life as a sales and marketing manager. So I did know what to do. I did know how to build a strategy. And so I just thought to myself, you know what? You need to dive into this and figure out what in the pro-life arena needs help.
Yeah.
And that's where I started.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you talked about when you came to faith, it didn't move you totally to pro-life, it moved you to the middle.
Right.
And I wonder how many people that are believers that, have strong faith but are in the middle and are, I'm going to say, afraid, for lack of a better term, to truly stand for life. And yeah, that's just something that kind of on my mind from time to time. How does one who's strong in faith stay in the middle? But thankfully, you found, God found a way to bring you out of the middle into active pro-life ministry, which is great.
Well, when I started doing the research, Tony, I found that about 19% of the U.S. population is what we would call strongly pro-choice. Yeah. About 22% of the U.S. population are strongly pro-life. But about 59% of the U.S. population are in the middle, somewhere along the continuum of, closer to pro-life or closer to pro-choice. And what I found was when I would ask people the question, when does human life begin? If you were pro-choice, they would answer after the child is born outside the woman and can sustain life on its own. If you're strongly pro-life, you'll say at conception.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle, though, that 59%, they'll say 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, heartbeat or feels pain.
Wow.
And, I feel like that has gotten into their, brain as what we call the familiarity effect.
Yeah.
They've just heard it so many times. It's what we've legislated.
Yeah.
So, unknowingly, we've helped to build that.
Right.
So I think a lot of people who have that strong faith struggle with understanding that really we're human from day one.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why I chose that as, our first product. Our company name is We Teach Think, because our goal is to teach people to think on their own.
Okay.
And our first product is human from day one.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So tell me a little bit about each organization, and then we'll do a deep dive into each one.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah. We Teach Think is a parent company.
Okay.
And we are a 501c3 organization. And what we do is design television commercials, media, written information to try to teach the psychology of marketing to people. And to help them to understand how branding works, how branding gets in your brain, and how oftentimes that brand, whether it's true or not, sometimes we believe things to be truth that are not truth, simply because we've heard it over and over and over again. So our first product was humanfromday1.com because we wanted to tackle the topic of abortion in a way that would move those middle-minded people to what we call a life-minded position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So when you talk about We Teach Think, you said the goal there is to provide, train, and launch multi-generational media campaigns. What does that look like in real practice?
Yeah, in real practice. And when I talk to people about it, I say, think back through history. There were several socially acceptable things that are now socially unacceptable. One of those would be drunk driving. So you think through the national marketing campaign that Mad Dads did with drunk driving. We did it with seat belts and the seatbelt dummies. We did it with Smokey the Bear in forest fires, Keep America Beautiful. All of those things were at one time socially acceptable and now unthinkable, socially unacceptable. And that's the goal that we have with abortion as well. And all of those things had in common a consistent nationwide message.
Okay.
And that's what we've set out to design.
Okay. So in that, one of your strategies is called raising hands. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, well, in all marketing, what your goal is to get the consumer or your potential customer to gain agreement that your product is what they want and that they become loyal to that commitment. So oftentimes you start with somebody who, and it doesn't matter what you're selling, cars, soda, anything. You want to make them loyal customer to your product.
Okay.
So gaining agreement with them is the ultimate goal of any company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we say raising hands. People start out with a no, but we want them to say yes.
So with all of that, I'm learning a lot here as far as advertising is concerned, but how do you design campaigns that break into the lives of people who may be disinterested or even avoidant of conversations about human life?
Right. Well, first of all, we try to use words that are not already trigger words.
Okay.
So we don't say conception.
Okay.
We don't say Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use any words that would cause a middle-minded person to already say, stop listening. They put their hands up over their ears like, oh, you're a crazy pro-lifer.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk about this topic. So in all of our advertising, we try to talk in day numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at in our first two commercials, the day numbers roll backwards.
Okay.
They start at like 60,000 and roll backwards. To day 56 or day 1 with the pre. Now, if I told you like I'm 60,102 days old or 20,102 days old, you would have to do math in order to figure out how old I am. So in our brain thinking system, we have like system 1, which is remembered information. It's that child that says, ooh, 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 I know the answer right away. But system 2 is the more analytical part of your brain that has to take a look at the information. Okay. So when we use words that are already learned or have a bias tied to them, System 1 will recognize what that is. So our goal is to get System 2 in your brain to have to think about it.
Yeah.
So when we talk in day numbers, we don't say conception, we say day 1 because it's not already a learned bias.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Within our organization, one of the things that we talk about all the time is the lexicons that we use for life. And it's a slow process, but once again, we're in the pro-life movement, and just to even retrain our brains to not use words that automatically turn people off to the work that we're doing.
Right.
And so that's something that we think about all the time, changing our lexicon of words that we use, whether it's in print form or spoken. And it's a challenge. Sometimes I'll say something like, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that.
Right.
So
I know.
Ever learning, ever learning, ever learning.
Life Matters is the program where we engage life issues with critical thinking and a biblical worldview, and it is a ministry of Assure Women's Center. We're expanding our ministry to reach women who speak only Spanish, and we need your help right now. If you've ever felt God nudging you to serve with us and you speak Spanish, this is your moment to step in. We're actively looking for bilingual volunteer advocates. Lives are at stake, and we can't do this without you. Visit firststeptolife.com today to learn more and get involved. That's firststeptolife.com.
So technology is advancing so quickly, and at the same time, human value is often defined as usefulness. Why is it urgent to reintroduce deeper thinking now?
Right. Well, I talk a lot about value in our culture. Mm-hmm. And right now, we value born life more than we value preborn life.
Yeah.
And so trying to balance that is really tricky. In anybody who's selling any kind of product, that the more value you have on your product, the more you can sell that product for.
Yeah.
So not that we're selling preborn life, but what we're doing is selling the value of preborn life and trying to make that. That's why so oftentimes when words like healthcare are used to define abortion, it's a feel-good reason to continue to support something that middle-minded person wouldn't do themselves because they perceive abortion as healthcare simply because they've been marketed to for 50 years that this is women's healthcare. And so trying to use technology to get around those kinds of topics by using words that don't already have bias, images that don't already have bias, to reframe that topic.
Yeah. That's a good point. The times when I'm out, I challenge people. I said, when you hear the term women's health care, listen to who's saying it and in what context. I think, once again, the abortion industry has used that term to signify abortion. I think sometimes we don't realize that. And so I challenge people, when you hear that, think about who's saying it and what's the context. And it's not women's health care.
Yeah.
It's their 90% of the time, I'm going to say 99% of the time, talking about abortion.
Yeah, they are.
They're not talking about heart disease and diabetes and, they're talking about abortion.
Right. Well, I try to reframe the word healthcare. I say sometimes things that are a medical procedure are not necessarily health care. They seem like they go together because a doctor is involved, or it's you're taking a pill of some sort. So it seems like it's health care, but it's really not. That's called a post hoc fallacy. Things that seem like they go together, but really don't go together at all. It's like saying that every time the sun rises, the rooster crows, therefore the rooster crowing causes the sun to rise. They happen in consistently every day. So they seem like they go together, but they don't.
Yeah.
So when I reframe the term healthcare, I will often say to people, would you consider medical surgery to reduce the amount of wrinkles that I have on my face healthcare? Everybody says no.
Yeah.
It's a medical procedure. It's performed in a doctor's office, but it's not medically necessary to save my life as a woman. So then I say, well, what if I outlawed the medical procedure of a facelift? Would women then not have access to health care? No, it's a ridiculous statement, but that's what's happened, is that the abortion industry has really latched onto the word healthcare and have got a good majority of the U.S. population believing that if women don't have access to abortion, they will not have access to healthcare.
That's absolutely true. Wow. I wish I could just carry you around and, just push your button and you speak for me. But I'm going to remember these things.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
So another principle you emphasize is slow and steady wins the race. What do you mean by that?
Well, the culture does not change overnight. And it takes a good amount of time to actually see cultural change. And you usually can't see it until it's already happened. Many times people will say, well, how did we get here? With not realizing that there was a strategy that was in place for a lot of years for us to get to this point. This, abortion being socially acceptable in our nation did not happen overnight. They've had good 50 years of, one thing the abortion industry is good at is marketing.
Yeah.
They are.
Absolutely.
And so we've gotten to this point. It took 50 years. We have to understand that, laws change when our culture changes. And it's my belief that it doesn't happen before that. I'm not a political organization. We don't endorse any candidates or legislation. But I do believe that laws will follow when the culture actually changes. So even though you can't see the results from the work that you're doing today, it will be visible tomorrow.
Yeah.
And just understanding, sometimes in this industry that we're doing, it can become very frustrating because you don't see your results immediately.
Yeah.
And it's generational.
Yeah. That's good. That's encouraging. As I think about the young ladies that we serve, if one makes a decision to choose life for her unborn baby, and we've seen it, and mom comes in and she chooses life for her baby because her mom encouraged her, then that young lady comes back, the baby that was born comes back years later and is in the same situation. Yeah. Mom has said to her, I was with you at the same point 17, 18 years ago, and I chose life, and you're going to do the same. And so it's just that repeated, slowly changing habits of and thoughts about life. That's an encouragement.
Right.
Thank you. That's encouragement. So why do you think it takes time to retrain people to think through fundamental truths about life?
Well, one of the things we are as humans is we don't like to be wrong.
Yeah.
The fear of public speaking, fear of death, and fear of being wrong.
Yeah.
So when you change your position on something, especially something so strong as abortion, you're basically admitting I was wrong for a number of years. And that's a hard thing for us to do. We become very loyal to the decisions that we've made in the past. So when we change our position, that's really telling the world, I was wrong. When I had that meltdown, the biggest fear that I had was my grandchildren only knew Catholic grandma. They only knew the one that was teaching Christ and all of that. They didn't know the grandma that was pro-choice, that was doing all these other things. And I feel like that other guy likes to instill fear.
Yeah.
It's the most powerful tool that he has, that you're worried, oh my gosh, how am I going to explain this to these kids that I had this other position? And what I found, Tony, was the best way is just to hit it head on.
Yeah.
I sat them all down. I said, look, Grandma has not always made great decisions in my life. And I'm getting ready to do this. So I want you to know that if somebody said to you, did you know that your grandma is on the donor list for Planned Parenthood? And you just say, yes, I know that. But God is not so concerned with what you've already done. He's more concerned with what you're getting ready to do.
Yeah.
And so when somebody confronts you, because there's going to be people who don't like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to point out the flaws in my life, which there are many. And so when that happens, you just say that.
Yeah.
Yes, my grandma did that, but here's what she's doing now.
Absolutely. That's good. Once again, that's just a word of wisdom, a word of encouragement. Once again, we all have past, and there have been things that, perhaps we're ashamed of, have been forgiven for.
Right.
And the enemy would hold that over our head. He is an accuser of the brethren.
Oh, yeah.
And if we can just say, you know what? Yeah, I did that, but look at me now. Look where God has me now. It shuts him up, but also allows someone else to see, man, I can change too.
Right.
And
it's very empowering.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. So how do you keep patience and persistence when cultural change feels so slow?
Well, that's a great question. It's sometimes I believe God knows when I need that little bit of a boost, because, with a pregnancy center such as your own, I can't at every day say, oh, we had a save today.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Yeah.
But when I need a little boost, I know that our Lord is there and he gives me that little thing. I got a picture text to me the other day, and I've got a billboard that has an egg and sperm. It says, this is you on day one of your life. Well, it's a bumper sticker too. And so one of my neighbors has it on their car. She sent me a picture of her 2-year-old little girl bending down and looking at the bumper sticker.
Oh.
And she said that her little girl looked up at her and said, Mommy, look, it's a baby.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's what I'm after, that generational change. And it was the affirmation I needed that day to keep me going.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And once again, we have those same little, I can't tell you how good it makes me feel when I'm out someplace and someone will walk up and say, I came to your center 4 or 5 years ago, and this is the result of me coming. And we know it's nothing that we did, but it's just the power of the Holy Spirit moving in that young lady's life. But he used us, and we don't, once again, we don't do it because we need that, but sometimes it's just good to have that little pat on your back, like, you're doing a good job.
Right.
You may not see it, you may not understand it. Right. You're doing a good job. And so that's all. That's a sweet story. Sweet story. So you also use something called sheep media that interrupts normal thinking.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of how you do that?
Yeah. And kind of talking about using those different words that cause people to think of things differently. We started an animation series recently that targets the, I'd say college and younger, because that's what they look at, the animation shorts. But when we talk about when life begins, we try to gain agreement by saying, could we agree that if a human egg and a human sperm were joined together, that it would begin growing? Yes. Well, if something is growing, then could we also agree that it must be taking in some kind of nutrition? Yes. So if something is growing, taking in nutrition, and that something happens to be a human egg that was joined with the human sperm, the only thing that could be is a human person that is alive. So, we try to go through that logic. Well, we do the same thing with when we've aided in the death of something. So instead of telling people, don't you know it's murder when you do abortion? Emotions get very high as soon as you say that. So what we use is a dandelion. So in the animation, it says, could we agree that if I removed a dandelion from my yard and placed it on my driveway, that I've aided in the death of that dandelion? Or what if I sprayed the dandelion with weed spray, taking away its ability to take in nutrition? Would you also agree that I aided in the death of that dandelion? So people know what we're talking about, and what our goal is to get into that system 2 thinking that is different than system 1's automatic response. Personal change comes when you personally make that decision, not when you're told to make a decision.
Please join us next week for part 2 of our interview with Angela Copenhaver. Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. To learn more about the ministry of Assure, visit firststeptolife.com. That's firststeptolife.com. There you can learn about the many services we provide, including how we come alongside abortion-minded mothers and empower women to choose life for her and her baby, as well as find our most current broadcasts and all of our past episodes. We're expanding our ministry to reach women who speak only Spanish, and we need your help right now. If you've ever felt God nudging you to serve with us and you speak Spanish, this is your moment to step in. We're actively looking for bilingual volunteer advocates. Lives are at stake, and we can't do this without you. Visit firststeptolife.com today to learn more and get involved. That's firststeptolife.com.